Hello guys and gals, welcome back to another episode of Haunted Gaming. This time we do a creepypasta called A Jumble of Letters. This creepypasta begins with the player telling us about a link they visited a month ago, a link so horrifying it sends chills down the spine. A while back, the player was browsing some imitation 4chan V boards, and on one of these boards the player came across a thread whose title contained some random letters, as if someone was just punching their keyboards pushing random keys left and right. The text appeared to be much of the same, and on closer inspection, it looked like some characters were sandwiched between repeated strings of words. The player states they had way too much time on their hands and decided to decode this and uncover the true hidden message. This string of characters turned out to actually be a link, except without the punctuation. The player decided to get some free antivirus software and head to this link and see what was to be offered. The site was full of ads, and the player was able to bypass them and notice the site was essentially just a download link. The player clicked on this link and downloaded a zip file called 432b. This file, once unzipped, contained a .gba file called 432b.gba and an emulator to play the ROM in. The player loaded the ROM up in the emulator and played the ROM. The game played okay, some buttons wouldn't work, and the graphics appeared to be similar to Final Fantasy Advance 6. The game loaded up at the title screen, no publisher or developer splash screen. Play was the only option that worked, and so the player selected the only option for the screen to cut black for 4 seconds. The game loaded up and the player controlled a character wearing something resembling Link's outfit, except with the iconic green it looked brown. The game's premise was very simple according to the player. All you have to do is run away from wolves that would chase you, or fail and be eaten. The game turned out to be very fun, and despite that somewhat off nature of the game, the player wasn't scared whatsoever, but claims that he or she is not the paranoid creepypasta protagonist either. After being chased and killed, more specifically after the 5th death, the screen where the wolves were depicted eating the player's character was longer than usual, and with each life the character grew thinner and moved slower, but the wolves would remain the same. The player then theorized that it may be possible to die before the game began, and after 50 playthroughs the character looked near death, and at that moment the player gained control of his or her character. The wolves, they just pounced on the player's character. This time the wolf-eating scene lasted for 20 seconds before sending the player back to the menu. But now a continue option appeared. Selecting this option, the game simply showed the wolves eating the character. It lasted for a minute before the wolves turned away, showing a skeleton of the character, mostly clean. Selecting continue again would simply show the skeleton for a minute before the sounds of the wolves howling was heard. The game's menu now had a bonus option, and selecting it would show the character's skeleton up close. And despite the limitations of the Game Boy Advance's graphics, it was still well detailed. There were more images, just the character decaying, except for one. It was a picture of a wolf, foaming at the mouth with glistening teeth and glowing red eyes. The player exited the menu and heard a snarl from his or her speakers. Deciding to then play the game again, it just started to the point where the player's character was eaten instantly. The player exited the game and then the emulator and ROM just deleted itself. The player was a little saddened since it was really creepy and it was also fun. The player returned to the site, but the post was different and there was no text. Just a picture of the wolf with the red eyes. That's really it. The player, however, claims that occasionally when performing tasks on the computer, the player will hear howls from the PC. Sometimes, even a snarl. Well, that was a jumble of letters. It was quite refreshing and unique. It didn't have the hyper-realism, intense gore, and one-dimensional protagonists that usually play creepypastas. In fact, I thought it was creepy. Although a little short, but still well done. I like the fact that it actually felt realistic and that the events could actually happen. I mean, anyone can make a website that could host an emulator and ROM. Wouldn't be too difficult, not require a whole lot of space. The game itself can't be difficult to produce, provided some programming and graphics skills were invested into the production. And given the fact that the emulator, Visual Boy Advance, featured in this creepypasta, is open source, you can make the emulator do some pretty creepy things if you really wanted. The game itself was pretty cool. It's nothing we haven't seen before, but it's pretty awesome. A game that you can't win. And no matter what you do, what you try, what happens, you ultimately lose. A game that keeps getting harder each time it's played. But eventually, no matter how much determination is put in, you will fail. And worse yet, be eaten by a pack of wolves. Maybe it could be a representation of the idea of descent into madness, or, like always, I could just be overthinking things. Again, nothing we haven't really seen before, but it's pretty well done. The character was also pretty cool, given the fact, I think it's what a lot of people would have realistically done in this situation, or at least what I would have done. Play the game, but not necessarily, completely panic or be completely cool with the situation, just someone in between playing the game out of curiosity, seeing what it has to offer. And in the end, that's really all I have to say. I thought it was pretty cool, and as far as the game goes, despite not being based on a real game per se, I'd take a shot in the dark, and I guess it would be the closest to resembling, Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, maybe playing on the idea of Descent into Madness and the inclusion of wolves I talked about earlier, but who knows? Hell, I got Okami gameplay up on the screen, so it could be anyone's guess. Tell me what you think in the comments below, and if you have a creepypasta you'd like to submit, please tell me in the comments below as well, or post it on the Some Ordinary Gamers wiki. This has been another episode of Haunted Gaming, and if you like what you saw, then like, comment, and subscribe. This is me, Mudahar, and I'm out.